The 2025 Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit is set to open today in Tianjin, drawing over 20 leaders to deliberate on key global issues. In the latest developments, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri held a news conference highlighting Prime Minister Narendra Modi's discussions with Chinese leaders on peaceful border management, economic cooperation, and long-term developments. Modi then emphasized that India and China are partners, not rivals, and shared consensus on resolving differences fairly while focusing on domestic development and stabilizing global trade. On the sidelines, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and was spotted alongside Belarusian President Lukashenko. Xi Jinping has also proposed expanding practical cooperation with Turkey and received an invitation for BRICS for 2026, while India has sought Myanmar's support for connectivity on projects. This year's summit comes against the backdrop of rising global conflicts, U.S. tariffs on India, and growing digital security threats. Leaders are expected to deliberate on energy, counter-terrorism, and regional stability, while projecting the SCO as a non-Western power bloc. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. He's a former diplomat and joins us live from New Delhi, and also Scott Faulkner. He's the head of Eagle Enterprises, a security firm from Washington, D.C. Thank you both for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. And now I would like to go to Scott for my first question. With SCO promoting fair trade as an alternative to Western-led economic systems, should the U.S. adapt its trade policies to remain competitive and relevant in regions leaning towards SCO cooperation? What do you think?
Well, the SCO Summit is actually happening at an interesting time because the United States has been leveling very severe tariffs onto India relating to Russian oil. And it really is perplexing to a lot of us because Trump and Modi seem to have a very warm personal relationship going back to Trump's first term. And early on in his second term, he really was looking at India to be sort of what we call a reshoring, trying to move a lot of the American supply chain, if not directly back into the United States, into India because of India's strong technology and engineering expertise. So to have these strong 50% tariffs on India at the time that India is meeting with all of the SCO leaders there and outside of Beijing, it's very challenging to figure out where America's future trade relationships are with India and with that really all of the global South. Right now it seems that a lot of things are in flux, and a lot of us are trying to figure out what really is going to be happening as we move forward.
Yes, thank you very much, Scott, for sharing that. Now, Ambassador, I would like to come to you. Now, with India emphasizing strategic autonomy amid rising U.S. tariffs on India, how does it balance ties with both China and the West through platforms like the SCO?
Thanks for having me on your show. You know, the aggressive U.S. tariff policy under the Trump administration has had the unintended consequence of pushing India and China closer together. Faced with U.S. antagonism, India has been forced to recalibrate its policy and seek better relations with China, balancing these relations with its relations with the Western countries. Now, very positive sentiments were expressed by PM Modi and President Xi Jinping at their meeting, which took place on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. So during this meeting, PM Modi reportedly said that India is committed to taking ties with China forward based on mutual trust and respect. And President Xi Jinping said that both sides should view and handle India-China relations from a strategic and long-term perspective and elevate them through the Tianjin Summit and promote the sustained, healthy, and stable development of bilateral relations. Now, there is, of course, one fundamental problem. Uh, China wants relations to flourish and the border issue to be set aside. But India wants that there should be a resolution of the border issue and that the relationship will only move forward meaningfully once that happens. Therefore, I think a fundamental realignment is not likely, and India will continue to maintain a cautious stance towards China. Let me just add that the recent improvements in India-China relations should be perhaps viewed as a calculated and tactical détente. India's recalibration of ties with China is an application of its policy of strategic autonomy, which prioritizes national interests.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing that. Scott, what's your take? What do you think? Can India sustain this balancing act without compromising its core economic or security interests, according to you?
I think it can, because you have to recognize that before Modi arrived in China, he had a really important meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. And when you start to look at how India is really pivotal to all these international entities, whether it's the BRICS, whether it is the SCO, and Japan, of course, represents part of the Quad with the United States and Australia. And his meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister, they forged some very important partnerships relating to exploration of the moon and Japanese investment into India. So the result is that India, and under Modi's leadership, is steering I think a very practical and pragmatic and strategic course between all of these conflicting organizations and conflicting interests. And China would like to be the center of the world. They've said that for many years. They hope that the pageantry of the SCO will translate into not just some nice visuals, but into something more substantive. We'll have to see as the next 2 days of meetings play out in China. But I think Modi has positioned India well to balance all of these different competing interests and to hopefully have India emerge as a strong, independent player on the world stage.
And building on that, Scott, how does this SCO's growing collaboration with ASEAN and its emphasis on multilateralism challenge U.S. leadership in the Asian and Pacific? What do you think?
We're going to be getting more clarity on that. Sergio Gore has been named the U.S. ambassador to India. He's very close to Trump, very integral into Trump's actual financial world because of arranging for some of the publishing of his best-selling books. He has no international experience. So we'll be seeing whether this Trump intimate coming to India is going to be a opening of a new relationship and opportunities for India, or whether he's coming as an enforcer of whatever Trump's policy is of the day. And so a lot of this will be borne out in confirmation hearings coming up in the next couple of weeks for Ambassador-designate Gore. But that's going to be a very interesting set of insights as to what the future of U.S.-India relations are going to be.
And thank you, Scott, for sharing that. Ambassador, what's your take? Do you agree with Scott? How does this growing SCO's collaboration with ASEAN and its emphasis on multilateralism challenge U.S. leadership?
You know, India has a stake in a very good long-term relationship with the United States. In fact, both countries had worked steadily to build this relationship, and it is now tragic that the Trump tariffs have eroded a lot of the trust which existed in India. Nonetheless, there is the need to rebuild the relationship and iron out the mistrust, and I hope that the new US ambassador will be able to get down to this task, because there is no doubt that the strategic partnership between the United States and India is very important for both countries. There are a whole host of issues on which our views have been identical. but the tariffs which have been imposed, and also the insistence by President Trump that India should stop buying oil from Russia, these are impediments which are eroding trust. And I hope that things can be put back on the trails. Now, let me also mention that since the US improved major new tariffs on India this month, China has worked to improve its relationship with New Delhi. Beijing has indicated that it will provide greater access to its markets for Indian goods to help India offset the impact of the US tariffs. And Chinese officials have publicly condemned the US tariffs of 50% on Indian goods. And the Chinese ambassador in India has explicitly said that his country will firmly stand with India to uphold the multilateral trading system. So all this indicates that there are some changes in the global scenario which are taking place. One has to watch them very carefully. But I can add that there is some distrust between India and China, and despite the positive developments, and while diplomatic and trade ties would probably take off, major impediments will still prevent full normalization. And as I said earlier, the primary obstacle to full normalization is the unresolved border dispute along the line of actual control.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sharing that. Now I would like to broaden to and bring Russia and China's relationship in this. Scott, I would like to come to you for this. What role does China play in shaping Russia's international posture through platforms like the SCO? Do you think this deeper alignment with China risks further isolating Russia from other global partners? What do you think?
Well, Putin is trying desperately to rehabilitate himself on the world stage. His meeting with Trump in Alaska was certainly a major jump in that direction. His appearance in China as part of the SCO and will be up on the reviewing platform for the victory parade on the 3rd of September relating to the end of World War II in the Pacific. And so it's so Putin and Xi certainly both have a mutual interest on building that counterbalance to the United States and to other U.S.-focused alliances like NATO. And unfortunately, Trump's 50% tariff on India, and also something else which most people have missed, that Trump announced this last week about de minimis waivers have been removed, which means no matter what other tariffs are involved, you end up with anything under $800 US per unit were exempt from tariff coverage. Now he has removed that de minimis, so no matter how small the item, how cheap the item, everything is now covered by tariffs. And that's already provoked a number of reactions from even European trade partners regarding in essence, the brutality of these tariffs, even against our U.S. friends. So it's going to be interesting how the Russia-China relationship takes advantage of all this. It's obviously Putin would like to prevail in the Ukraine. He'd like to prevail in rebuilding the Soviet Union. China, I think, would love to see him remain a counterbalance and thorn in the side of the United States and NATO. So there's a lot of mutual interests that I'm sure are being talked about while everybody's sitting in China.
Thank you, Scott, for sharing that. Now we have another guest joining us, Rupinder Sachdev. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you for joining us today. Rupinder, I would like to ask, what's your take? I was just asking Scott about this, that Russia and China are deepening its ties. Do you think this will isolate Russia and China further amidst this ongoing war with Ukraine?
Well, thank you. A pleasure to be with you and your eminent guests. Yeah, Russia and China are definitely tangoing a lot closer. Their economies are getting very much interlinked. And actually, it's not only Russia and China, even Central Asia is getting linked and interconnected with China to a very large extent. And Central Asia, of course, within the context, geographical context and historical context of the Soviet Union. So this region, let's put it this way, this region, Eurasia, is getting much more integrated in terms of economy, especially Russia and China. So, I mean, it won't isolate Russia and China in world affairs, if that's what I understand you're asking. What it will do, okay, a lot will depend upon where the Ukraine conflict ends up. The Russia-Ukraine war, do we see a ceasefire and peace, even if a freezing of sorts in the coming months, or is it something which slogs on? If it is something which slogs on, then of course we can expect, it seems, definitely, Russia will get more and more connected, interconnected, interdependent with China. So to a good extent, it will depend upon how the Russia-Ukraine conflict not ends, but let's say comes to a pause or a freeze. That would be my overall assessment out here.
Thank you very much for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we stay on this topic.